I got a new segment for us. It's kind of similar to fact and fiction in a way, but it's called Boom or Bust. So I'm just going to give a generalization of a new player on a new team or just something like that. You're going to tell me if they're going to be a boom or a bust on the team. So first off, we haven't really talked about him much, but Matt Ryan on the Colts, boom or bust?
I say boom in comparison to Carson Wentz, but like not like a boom boom.
No.
Okay. Okay, so you thinking that so
It's an upgrade from Wentz,
okay.
but he's not like quite like a boom.
All right, I'll characterize it as this: a boom is them making the playoffs. A bust is
All right,
them
then
with a
a boom
losing
for
record.
sure. Boom, no doubt. Boom.
Really?
Playoffs.
I mean, you're forgetting about the strength of the AFC now,
Yeah, that's reasonable.
especially the wild card teams. Like the AFC West could just take the wild card. Just all the teams could be the wild card at this point. And then there's the AFC North because
I'll still stick with it. Dude, Matty Ice is coming out like no other.
I mean, but they're really. I think their only hope at the playoffs is beating out the Titans for the division.
Yeah, and I think they can do that.
Because realistically, okay, let's think of the teams here. We got Chargers. Let's just say that the Chiefs win the division. Let's just say they win. Chargers, Broncos, Raiders, Dolphins, Browns, because I'm going to assume that the Ravens win our division. What number am I on? 5 or 4? Browns, possibly Steelers, Dolphins.
I'm not putting Raiders up in that group. They don't have the defense to carry them.
They don't have the they just got Chandler Jones and
they have a better defense, but I'm still not seeing it as a playoff defense.
Okay. I'll give you that it's not a playoff defense, but I think in the regular season they're still going to be good enough to make the playoffs. Okay. Well, Stat Boy, do you think Matt Ryan is a boom or bust?
I think compared to having Carson Wentz on the team, he is a boom, but the whole team as a whole, compared to last season, will be a bust. I think they will go even farther down the poop hole than last year. They're going to be really down bad this upcoming year. They're not going to do well. We thought they'd be able to do something next year or last year, but this year is not going to be the same. I think they will be pretty low on teams in the AFC.
Well, guys, I'm going to remind you, Matt Ryan's time in Atlanta, he's never really had a good defense. Atlanta's never been known for having a good one. Matt Ryan has only had one defense that's finished in the top 10 in yards allowed, and that year he lost in the divisional round of the playoffs. So he doesn't need to play. And I mean, I wish it was the Super Bowl year because that would help my case a lot. But I mean, obviously he played like an MVP that year. That's never going to happen again. I see him as like a better Joe Flacco in a way, where Joe Flacco had that one really good year when, they made it to the Super Bowl, except they won that time. But my thing also with him is that he might have a good defense. He has a great offensive line. He actually has a running game with Jonathan Taylor because he's never, again, really had one in Atlanta. He doesn't have the greatest passing options, but they're not going to need him to throw the ball 40 times a game, 45 times a game. So I think he's going to be a boom on the Colts. I like, this fit into the system. My only worry about him is that he's had over 10 interceptions in each of the last 3 years. So the turnovers is definitely going to be a problem for them still. So I think he might turn the ball over more than Carson Wentz, but I think he's going to get it done more, and he's going to make better decisions than Carson Wentz. So I'm looking forward to seeing Matt Ryan on the Colts. Hopefully Julio can join him. I think that would be pretty sick to see that duo again somewhere else.
I like that. I like that a lot.
And especially because
Julio can be hurt on a different team this year.
Yeah.
And for the 5 games that he does play, he'll actually, get some targets because it's not like Michael Pittman is like the sole number 1 receiver. I bet him and Julio would kind of have a little bit of competition there. Pittman might have the edge a little bit, but still, I think Julio is going to get way more looks on that team. Yeah, so we'll see how Matt Ryan does. But guys, I kind of like this one because I think it's a tougher question than we think. So, boom or bust, the entire Jags free agency class. Okay, I'm going to list off some of the guys that are a part of this free agency class. Obviously, the most notable one, we got Christian Kirk. Darius Williams, who was the second corner on the Rams last year. Brandon Sheriff, who's a guard, or who was a guard for the Commanders. I don't know how to say his name, but he was the outside linebacker from the Falcons last year. He was actually the leading tackler in the NFL. His last name starts with an O. I don't want to pronounce it because I'm going to mess it up. And then we got Zay Jones, receiver on the Raiders. And then we all know who Evan Ingram is. So, yeah, guys, Stat Boy, we'll kick it to you first this time. Boom or bust?
I think this is a bust. I think they had so many options to go for, and they just gave all the money to the wrong players. I don't think this team is going to come together and do a whole lot. This will be Trevor Lawrence's second year. He'll develop a little bit, but I don't think they've given him the right tools, and I don't think this defense is what it's going to be with the guys that they have. I think this is a bust.
I mean, are you just saying that because of the money they gave Christian Kirk? Because Christian Kirk probably got, I would say 40% of the money they spent was, or 35.
They could have done a lot more. They could have gotten a lot more for a lot less. That plays into it. But all the other signings are just they're not that big, and I don't think that they're big enough to get them to where they want to be. They had the money, but I don't think they spent it in the right places.
Okay, respectable. And I will say, it is tough to validate that Christian Kirk one because it was so early in the off season that they had other options, and they're just like, no, we're gonna go with this guy. And I don't know if that's them trying to get other players and them just not being interested in coming to Jacksonville, working with a second year guy on definitely not even close to a playoff contending team. So I don't really know. The roster kind of sucks. So I felt like they were kind of pinned in a corner where, in a way, they kind of had to do this, because they're not exactly a big market. So it is going to be tougher for them to get, those bigger names. But I do understand your point there. Ryan, what are your thoughts?
I think it's a bust, and I see it as a lesser version of the Patriots did last year, where they went through and they signed a bunch of mid-tier guys that all helped the team in a good way. But I think this is even lesser than the Patriots. We looked at the Patriots last year. Man, they signed a lot of guys. None of them are great. Well, this year the Jags signed a lot of okay guys. None of them are good necessarily. Maybe one or two good to better guys. So I think it's even a step down from what the Patriots tried to do, and that's because you have Belichick doing it versus the Jags doing it. So obviously it's going to be a lesser version. So I don't really see this panning out too well. I mean, I think they'll be better than they were last year, but it's still a bust.
Guys, I'm gonna settle. I don't know what the middle of boom or bust would be. Mediocre. Okay, I'm gonna say they're mediocre this year. I like the defensive additions they made in Darius Williams and the guy from the Falcons. Because losing Miles Jack was a little bit confusing to me because they could have just not signed one of the receivers. Well, yeah, now we're fine with it because the Steelers have
I'm cool with it.
Yeah, but to me, you don't sign. I would much rather have Miles Jack on that defense than Zay Jones on the offense. Especially when you have he's kind of like Marvin Jones in a way, and you already so you already have that type of receiver. So to me, that just makes no sense. But I like Darius Williams and the guy from the Falcons. I do. I think they're going to be huge pieces on that defense, especially Darius Williams to kind of counteract Shaquille Griffin there. I think they're going to be a solid secondary. They're still kind of lacking in the safety department. Brandon Sheriff, I think, is huge for that offensive line, and they're probably going to draft an offense. I hope they draft an offensive lineman, but now that Miles Jack's gone, they might try to get another guy on the defensive end. But I don't see Christian Kirk and Zay Jones living up to anything. The Jags had a solid receiving core last year, and they didn't really do much. I know DJ Chark got hurt. But like Laviska Shenault, like, how do you not give that man more targets? Like, he's a solid I would say on most teams, borderline wide receiver 2, solid wide receiver 3. So, to me, it's just going to be the same story offensively. I think these guys are going to just play less, below expectations for sure. So I'm going to say they're mediocre this year. But guys, the last one I have for you, boom or bust, I'm just going to say the Raiders in general. With all their additions, they obviously got Chandler Jones. They got, Devontae Adams. They didn't really do much else besides that. But, those are two pretty big additions on both sides of the ball. And, they got Josh McDaniels as head coach. So what are your guys' thoughts?
I think that it's going to be a split. I think offensively, they're going to be a huge boom. I think Hunter Renfrow is going to be a great kind of side piece with Devontae Adams. Because Renfrow is an amazing receiver at this point in his career with his routes and stuff. And to have both him and Adams and Darren Waller, I think the offense is going to shine. It's going to boom. But defensively, like I mentioned earlier, you have Chandler Jones and Max Crosby's going to look nice from D ends. But other than that, I think their secondary is going to make them a bust. I don't think, unless Chandler Jones and Max Crosby get to the quarterback within a half a second every single play, someone's going to be open. So I think that's going to ruin their season more than they wanted to.
True. Yeah, I agree. I think having Josh McDaniels, I think that offense will explode. And, with the weapons that Derek Carr has, he will be an elite quarterback, as I say, time and time again. So, yeah, I have very high hopes for them offensively. What are your thoughts, Stat Boy?
I think this was a huge boom because they went out, they got their feet wet into the market, and they were able to sign some really good guys that people, were really trying to get on other teams, right? The Broncos were trying to get Devontae Adams. He was in the mix for basically, I don't know, probably half the league. Basically, everybody wanted him, but the Raiders were able to get him. And I don't think they lost a lot of that team from last year, right? There was very few changes to the roster from last year. They just added weapons, and that's pretty much what people want in their team for their team to do. No, I said feet. I said not meat.
Yeah, he said feet.
You said meat. That's what I was laughing.
My meat wet.
Their meat wet.
I thought you said they got
the
their
Raiders.
meat wet.
The Raiders got their meat wet.
The Raiders got their meat wet in the market.
It is Vegas. Anything can happen in Vegas.
For those of you who don't know, in our shared doc, Ryan typed in "their meat is wet?" ? Because he thought in the beginning that Stat Boy said meat instead of feet.
Feat. No, Feet. Just, they got the big toe, dipped it in there.
Oh, for sure.
And they were like, oh, shit, we can actually do this. Let's do it. And I got Devontae Adams, a couple other pieces. And they're still going to be the team from last year. They were flirting with the playoffs. They were doing, okay. But I think they're going to go a step up this year. So this will be a boom for Raiders fans. They'll love it. They'll have a good time next year. This will be the second year in a row that they have the big stadium, and it's going to be a good time.
Okay, all right. Now, you guys probably expect me to say boo, because I've been such an advocate for Derek Carr, but I'm gonna have to stick at bust, honestly.
Ooh.
But hear me out.
Okay.
No doubt in my mind, Derek Carr is having a boom season. There is no doubt with the weapons that they're giving him. And, how many opportunities is going to open up for Waller and Renfrow, having Devontae Adams on that team, plus the chemistry that they have together. No doubt in my mind, Derek Carr is going to be an MVP candidate this year. No doubt. But like you said, Ryan, their defense is still just not good. Like, their defensive line is solid. Don't get me wrong. But they lost Casey Hayward to the Falcons, and he was the only decent corner on that team. So for me, they got really no secondary. So I think the Raiders are going to have to put up 30 points a game to, be able to have, a good wild card record, like an 11-6 or, a 12. Well, actually, I hope 12-5 is not a wild card team record, because then the Steelers are absolutely screwed.